This week, someone told me I need to take a moment before I respond, and I almost reacted the wrong way. Welcome to another coffee chat of It's Not Personal, It's Generational. Today, I want to talk about a practical emotional intelligence tool that can sound completely different depending on who uses it and who hears it. When someone says, I need to take a moment before I respond, not everyone is going to hear the same thing. The Gen X or Boomer, Gen X, like my case, our Boomer manager, may interpret it as an avoidance. For many of those generations, responding quickly was historically connected to competence. So if you answered fast, you show confidence and control. So when someone asks for a pause, the automatic translation can be they don't have the answer or they're showing weakness. A millennial often will understand this tool. They might have learned it in leadership training or through emotional intelligence content because they are very savvy about that. But they might use it with guilt because the mentors the millennials have are the older generations. So they grew up with the message of tough it out and don't show it. So even when they take the pause they need, they feel they have to apologize afterwards and explain themselves or prove they were still being productive. Employees, this is just simply expected. A good leader regulates themselves before speaking, period. There's no more translation than that. So they might not even realize where the misinterpretation happens. Let me just tell you about a recent meeting I had that I experienced myself. I was in a very tense meeting. The numbers weren't just where they expected to be, and everyone was already a little bit defensive and tense. And then someone younger on the team said, give me another moment. Give me a moment before I respond to that. That's what they said. It was a millennial. And I watched the director's face. You know, it went with this expression like he was very old school, Gen X, and someone who had built his career by thinking fast and speaking even faster. So his expression seemed to say they don't have the answer. They are buying your time. And honestly, my first reaction was exactly the same. That's exactly what I thought just by instinct. I was like, oh, they don't know the answer. And to be very honest, afterwards, that surprised me because I teach about this and I talk about the emotional intelligence every day. Now, after 15 seconds that passed, the person came back with a very clear answer and the specific numbers. There was no defensiveness, there was no rushing. They afterwards resolved the discussion in less than 2 minutes because the information was there and was clear and was where it needed to be. Afterward, that same person came to me privately to explain why they have taken the pass as if they need to justify it. And that's really when I realized something. The problem is not really what the director or how the director interpreted the pause, or that he interpreted the pause as a weakness. That was his interpretation. But the person taking the pause also believed that they have done something wrong by taking a pause. Now, both sides were operating from the same assumption that asking for a moment before responding, it's a problem. But let me tell you something, it wasn't. This is really neuroscience behind this. This is scientific information and this is emotional intelligence, at our fingers. When we are under stress, the amygdala that can temporarily take over our thinking, it reduces the resources available for the cortex, for the prefrontal cortex. So the part of the brain that helps us to evaluate information and consider options and choose words gets like kidnapped. Daniel Goleman actually called this an amygdala hijack. So if you Google it, you will see. So that pause isn't necessarily avoidance. This pause is exactly what allows us to respond instead of react. And that brings me to three different adjustments. If you hear I need a moment. And your automatic reaction is if they had the answer, they would have given it already. Make sure you change the translation. It's not really avoidance. This person might be taking a moment very maturely, emotionally maturely, so they can give a better answer. They might know the science behind, or they might not, but it will give a better answer. So if you're the person who apologizes for needing that pause, I'm telling you now, stop doing that. You don't need to apologize. You don't need to apologize for to compensate your brain yourself. That's not a weakness. That is emotional leadership. And if taking a pause is already completely natural to you, remember that not everyone around you interprets this the same way. So you might need to say it out loud. I need a moment so I can give you a thoughtful answer. Remember, we need to make sure that we are translating the sentence according to the who is saying, but who is receiving the information, to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings. So the next time someone in your team asks you for a moment, or you are the one who needs it, pause before judging the pause. Ask yourself, how am I translating this? Who is asking for the translation? Because the tool is the same across generations, but the translation is what changes. And honestly, I will say this, sometimes I have to remind myself of this because it's like an instinct. You have to create your own mental paths after you've been thinking, this paradigm that you have. And now I can recognize easier the reaction and take my own pause before judging someone else's. And that's the part that I'm still probably working on, because again, this is not a start and our end, this is an evolution. So I challenge you and see next time you're in a meeting or you ask that question or you see that pause somewhere else, what is your reaction? Now, what phrase was mistranslated for you this week? Share it with me in the comments. I might just include it in one of these coffee chats and let's try to translate it across generations. Because just remember, understanding each other's changes completely the conversation. And when the conversation changes, the results change as well. Next Wednesday, I will do I Need Commitment. So let's translate it next Wednesday. See you then.